And so I am going to give you a little story about my experience here. And if you've ever been to a Pentecostal revival meeting, this is going to sound like I'm standing up and giving a testimony because I once was lost and now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. So that's the kind of feeling that I have about moving to this hosting environment. Because, my website is absolutely mission critical. Most of you who are here have paid to get access to content on the site. And having paid, you need it when you need it, right? I can't afford to have downtime on my site. I can't afford to be hacked. I can't afford to have my site explode during upgrades. My site needs to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, kind of like the way I work. And that is my first and foremost concern when I think about hosting BYOB website. Now, I started off 5 years ago hosting this site at Bluehost for $4 a month. And, that worked fine for the first 6 months or so, but as the site started gaining traction and as it became more complex, and when I switched to wishlist member and when I added a forum, the site ran too slow on Bluehost. And I didn't know much about virtual private servers, but I bought the marketing hype of VPS.net and figured, well, I could probably afford to kick it up to $29 a month because the site speed is important to me, so I could spend $30 a month on a virtual private server. And it turned out that when I spent $30 a month, my site ran slower at VPS.net than it did on Bluehost. And so I started adding resources. And it wasn't until I spent $165 a month at VPS.net did my site end up being as fast as it was on my $4 a month purchase at Bluehost. On top of that my site was down for about a week in that first month. I mean, there was literally 7 24-hour segments during the month that I was with them that my site was entirely down and unavailable to any of my members. And that was a little bit of a catastrophe, way back then. And in that process, I met a young system administrator who helped me fix those problems on VPS.net, but I was so fed up with them that I wanted to move. And I moved to InMotion Hosting with this system administrator who administrated my VPS at InMotion Hosting. And at that point, I had pretty well decided that what I wanted to accomplish was going to cost me not $30 a month. So I had a $150 a month VPS hosting bill at InMotion Hosting. And then I paid Anthony $80 an hour or something like that to configure the server the way I needed it to be configured and to solve server issues for me while I was at InMotion Hosting. But about a year later, it became clear that the hosting packages at InMotion Hosting were not optimized for the needs that I had on my site. I was using both SimplePress Forum and Wishlist Member. And at the time, both of those were huge resource hogs. They required a great deal of memory. And I couldn't I didn't need a huge amount of bandwidth, and I didn't need a huge amount of storage or CPUs, but I needed a ton of memory. And I couldn't get that kind of a hosting deal with anybody in order to optimize the performance of my site. So Anthony set me up with a private server. Now, at that point, I'm paying $285 a month for hosting. And let me go back to InMotion Hosting for a moment. Anthony did improve the speed of the site by setting up properly W3 total cache, which I was simply not capable of doing. I needed somebody who understood servers in order to set that up. I backed my site up using Backup Buddy and VaultPress, which still advertises, constant, continuous backups. But in fact, the site still could go down during an upgrade. and did go down during a couple of upgrades. And the VaultPress backup system failed entirely. In fact, it failed so badly that I lost quite a bit of data there during that incident. And my backup buddy backup was like a week old. So I'd lost a week's worth of membership data and sales data and stuff like that, which at the time was pretty painful to lose because I had to go back and recreate those things. So it didn't meet my mission critical need at all. And so Anthony set me up on a private server that had two different types of caching. I had, again, optimized W3 total cache, and then he also overlaid that with a server-based caching, which, so I essentially had a server with all the CPU cores and all the memory that I absolutely needed in the configuration that I needed them in, rather than the configuration that they would come in from a regular supplier. He configured it so it backed up every single hour, and the site could go down anyway, right, during an upgrade. It did go down, in fact, on me on some upgrades. And, so it got to the point where what I really needed to do was use a Sandbox Site to test an upgrade on before I would go ahead and do it on my live site. Now, my site was huge by that time, and so setting up a Sandbox Site for my site really required me to have Anthony do it for me, because it was very time consuming otherwise to take a gigabyte of files and data and turn that into a Sandbox Site. And since it was a hassle to do that, I didn't do it very often because just making it was such a pain in the butt. Well, it got to the point where I couldn't upgrade wishlist member, because if I upgrade a wishlist member, my site went down. I couldn't upgrade Simple Press Forum, because if I did that, my site went down. And thus, I couldn't upgrade WordPress, because the most modern versions of WordPress at the time, 8 months ago, 3.9 I guess it was, broke both Simple Press and Wishlist Member. So 8 months ago I was stuck with a situation where I couldn't upgrade, and it was a total pain in the rear end to try and fix and solve that problem. I didn't have good server logs where I could see where the problem lay, and I just wasn't able to figure out what was causing the problem in that upgrade process on a sandbox testing site. On top of that, I had a persistent problem of my emails going into spam because the Google servers had some problem with the IP address serving that was happening, and I had this problem consistently, and so I had these problems that I couldn't solve. And just about at that time, Anthony took on a bunch of partners. They developed a big hosting company out of it. My price for hosting went way down. Now I was only paying $165 a month for hosting, but I no longer had Anthony as support. Now I had their standard tech support guy who didn't know my site at all, didn't know me from Adam, didn't even know I was running WordPress. And I mean, y'all know me. I know enough about all this stuff that I only need support when something is really not working right and is beyond my ordinary ability to problem solve. And the support that I was getting then for that $165 a month was not sufficient to really justify, in my mind, spending that. Right? I was paying for premium support, and I got the same level of hosting for $100 and some odd bucks less a month, but what I was really paying for was instant access to Anthony to solve my problems when I needed them solved, and I'd lost that. So I started looking around, and I decided to give WPEngine a try. Because a couple of members here had already gone there, I'd helped somebody migrate a site to WPEngine. I helped them work on their site on WPEngine, and I started to see the benefits. I imagined that the benefits of WPEngine would help me solve my problems. So I moved to WPEngine. Now, I was concerned about a couple of things. One, I was concerned that my systems wouldn't work properly on WPEngine, right? I was concerned that Wishlist Member and Simple Press and maybe WP eStore might not work properly on WPEngine. But I'd seen enough of it that I thought I would give it a try. And without any upgrades, with simply moving from the old server to WPEngine, one of my main concerns was the speed of the site, because I felt like I was paying a bunch of money to make sure my site was as fast as possible, and I was concerned that making the move would slow the site down. And I was gratified to see that, in fact, making the move didn't slow the site down at all. My site ran just as fast on WPEngine without W3 Total Cache and without all the extra expense. And so then I decided, well, okay, it's working just fine. Let's see if I can upgrade my site. So I set up the staging server. I upgraded a wishlist member. It died. But the error logs actually showed me why it died. And for the first time, I had information to be able to debug the things that were causing the conflict. And once I found those things that were causing the conflict, I was able to solve that problem. So flush with that success, I upgraded Simple Press. And again, my site crashed, but again, because of the server logs, I was able to identify why my site was crashing and what processes were in conflict. And I was able to solve those things because I knew that information. And all of a sudden, I was able to upgrade to the latest version of WordPress, have all my plugins upgraded, and ever since then, I have always been able to have the latest versions of everything running without having any problems whatsoever. And now I've been at it for 8 months. The site has been running fine. The site has never gone down since then, and I've never had a problem updating plugins or WordPress or anything. So it's been spectacular. So that's why I wanted to teach this, because I hear literally a couple of times a week one of my members say, well, I haven't upgraded because I was afraid to. And when I say that out loud, I know that there are a bunch of you here or a bunch of people listening to this that are going to have the same sense, right? That you're afraid to upgrade or update a plugin or update WordPress because you're afraid of the havoc that it may wreak if things go sideways. And I can tell you, this solves that problem. Even if things do go sideways, the solution to the ability to go back to restore to a place where everything is hunky-dory is slam dunk simple. Okay, that's the introduction. That's why I am delighted with WPEngine and why I am happy to advocate its use and why I'm demonstrating this to you today.